Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I'm here to help you finish your Christmas shopping list and let everyone else over there stiff-arm their competition while trying to fight off that tryptophan on Turkey Night. Now, what we did was we partnered with Rochester Sports Autographs, the largest JSA authenticated autograph distributor in the United States, where you can get up to 75% off over 30,000 autographed sports collectibles during this holiday season. They have something for everyone. But how is RSA able to offer such great deals on JSA authentication, you ask? Well, they do this by making deals directly with athletes so there are no extra markups, and they choose to then pass that savings on to you, the customer. Now, all orders from Rochester Sports Autographs are top quality and shipped to your door with top authentication and a money-back guarantee. But hurry up because customers are so stark raving mad for RSA that memorabilia sells out daily. All you have to do is head over to shoprsa.com/SHN. Again, that's shoprsa.com/SHN. So don't wait to bring home your favorites and own a piece of sports history for you and the loved ones on your shopping list this holiday season. This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today's podcast is a little extra special because it's my 100th podcast. Joining me today will be my friends Arnie Chapman and Dave DiPaolo, and we're going to be discussing the top 100 players in NFL history. We originally thought we could do this in two parts, but as it turns out, we're going to need a part one and part two just to cover the defense. So sit back and enjoy.
I was telling Mark, I looked at 3 lists of guys that shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, they're saying. And it's just insane. I mean, but I said to Mark, I wonder if these guys go and they look at other guys' lists, because some of the lists, all 3 guys, were in the same list. 3 of the same guys. Lynn Swann was in all 3 of them. He shouldn't be in according to these different guys. But, who knows? If everybody's got a different, that's what's crazy about these lists. They're so subjective. But it's still fun to do it.
All right. Well, the oldest list here with the top 100 is from 1999. That's the book you have, right? You have that book.
Yeah, here's the book here.
Sporting News.
100 Greatest Players. And it was Sporting News.
Right.
They're the ones that wrote the book.
Yep.
And in the beginning of the book, Mark, they wrote about how they selected, how many writers voted in on it and all the other stuff. And according to this thing, there was they had a selection committee with 300 names, and from the 300 names, they got it down to 100 names. And then every editor was asked to pick their top 10 guys without any rankings, just your top 10 players of all time. And from that, I guess that's where they got some of the unanimous picks. If a guy was picked by all 10 guys, he was selected unanimously. Right. And then from there, they filled out the next 50. They narrowed it down little by little. And they were all guys, I guess, that worked for the Sporting News. All these writers. 12 editors, actually, is what they were. So, but that when I got that book years ago, and then I compared it to what you were talking about, I think that last list, there was quite a few guys in the book that weren't on there.
Yeah, well, you're talking 23 years now, so the only real major objection I have to that Sporting News list is like most of these lists are very top heavy with quarterbacks and running backs. Of course, because, they're the guys that are holding the football, so that's the guys everyone's going to notice. So 34% of that top 100 was running backs and quarterbacks.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I looked at that. And from the list from 99 to 2019, the 20 span, 19, I think, guys were changed.
Right.
Guys dropped off and new guys that came out. And I hand wrote them down on a piece of paper.
Yeah,
and I think I sent you an email.
That's a lot. 19's a lot.
Yep. And we could go over that. Like you said, whatever you want to do first, we'll go over this.
We'll start with the defense, right?
Yeah, good. Go ahead, Mark.
So defensive tackle, they picked 6 guys, right? The Sporting News.
Yep.
They picked 6.
Yes, they did.
They got Lilly as number 1. They have Joe Green as number 2. Merlin Olsen is number 3. And those top 3, I really have no disagreement with at all. You can put them in any order you want, but I think those 3 guys were the top. I mean, most people, it seems, have those 3 guys as their top 3 defensive tackles. Then they have Alan Page, Randy White, and Buck Buchanan. The one guy I didn't have, out of those 6, the one guy I don't have on my top 100 is Buck Buchanan. I don't have him in my top 100. And it's hard to keep him off because he was certainly worthy of his Hall of Fame credentials. But I don't have him. I have the other 5. And like I said, I think Alan Page and Randy White are a little bit below the other 3: Lilly, Joe Green, and Merlin Olsen.
If I had to rank those, I wouldn't rank them. But I mean, if you had the gun to your head and you ranked them, I would put Merlin Olsen ahead of Joe Green.
I would too.
Joe Green played on 4 championship teams with the Steelers, so he made that famous commercial with the little kid. He throws him the shirt, and those things are very big. Like, for people don't think about it,
Yeah.
And they're very, very big. So, but
popularity.
Lilly, go look at these lists, Mark. These 100 greatest players. All of them, almost all of these guys are on some kind of a all-decade team.
Yep.
Not all of them, but somewhere they're all decade players, almost every one of these guys.
Right.
Then you got a handful of guys, very few. Lilly's one of them. He's all-decade in 2 decades.
Right.
That's how great he was.
Yeah.
And he only played till 74. He retired in 74. So he played 5 years in the 70s.
And
only
74.
half the decade.
Yeah. So I would. I mean, if you only could take 11, pick an 11-man defense, I would take Lilly and Olsen. No, I think the only reason I put Green slightly below them is because Lilly and Olsen hardly ever got injured, and Joe Green started to have a lot of injuries in his towards the end of his career. He was injured a lot.
Yeah, you talked about that.
Yeah, not that that's his fault, but I think Lilly and Olsen were just more durable. So I would agree with you there.
Olsen holds the record for 14 Pro Bowls. This was back when the Pro Bowl meant something. Forget about this garbage where the fans vote. That's trash. It becomes a popularity cut. This is when you were only voted on by your peers. All this other crap with the fans voting for the Pro Bowl, it's all stuff they do to make you feel like you're involved in the process and all this other feel-good stuff. Right. Take that away. Merlin Olsen has 14 Pro Bowls, more than Lilly even. Yeah. But don't forget, to Lilly's defense, those early teams he played on were atrocious.
And he was playing defensive end in the beginning.
Yeah, he was out of position. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was out of position. I want to just show you this bookmark. I know nobody can see it, but when they have each player, like here, take this page, for example. Mike Singletary, he's ranked number 56.
Uh-huh.
And on the bottom, there's a list. You see Walter Payton there. There's a list of players. And it has nothing to do with it. It says best players I've ever seen selected by Bill Walsh. So that's on each page. There's some kind of a list. It's very interesting. And a lot of them are best players I've ever played against. And so, like Sam Huff, most intense lineman I ever played against, written by Sam Huff. But the best players I've ever seen, this is Bill Walsh talking here. He had Joe Montana at number 1, Jim Brown at number 2, irrespective of position. And he had Bob Lilly at number 3, the third greatest player he'd ever seen, Bill Walsh. So, like, when people start to argue about stuff and stuff like this, I always go back to, like, look, Bill Walsh knew a little about football, right?
Yeah.
And but there's 100 things like that in this book for each player, and they're very, very interesting. You see what some of the players thought about a lot of the players that they played against, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, defensive end. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bert.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you want to move on to defensive end?
Yes, yep.
Yep, they have Deacon Jones at number 1, Gino Marchetti at number 2, Reggie White at number 3, Bruce Smith at number 4, and Willie Davis at number 5. And on my list, I don't have Willie Davis. The other 4 I have. And,
yes.
I would, the top if I had to pick an 11-man defense, I think I'd go, oh boy, that would be tough. I'd go with Deacon Jones. I don't know. Between Gino Marchetti and Reggie White, that would be tough to pick one. That would be really tough to pick one over the other. Because that's pretty much a toss-up, I think.
How much was the difference between Marchetti and so like Reggie White, of course, is more my era. What was the the style
Marchetti
of play?
mainly? Well, Marchetti really was the first. He was really the first defensive end that would grab. The art of grabbing and throwing the blocker out of the way. That was more his style, like just getting under his shoulder pads, grabbing him, and throwing him out of the way. And then Lilly did that as a defensive tackle. But Reggie White was more like of a bull rusher. So I think Reggie White was more of a power rusher. And of course, they played in very different eras. Marchetti was mainly like late 50s and played into the 60s.
Yeah, he was one of the first guys, like Mark said, to be recognized, like as defensive players weren't really like recognized as much until it became popular when Landry coached the New York Giants, and they were chanting for defense. That was a big thing. You never heard that ever. That was the first time you heard people cheering for the defense.
That's right.
So I'm looking at the names in the book. So it's got 216 games. It tells you how many games they played. Marchetti, 161. Reggie White with 200 sacks. And no sacks, obviously, for Marchetti. They didn't keep track of it. So that's a big thing. But, you can't just go by statistics.
No.
Those lists I was talking about before, was talking about guys that shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
They're running down statistics on all the players. You can't really go by that. The game has changed so much.
That's right.
It's hard. There's got to be other things. A real telltale sign with these lists is if you played 14 years and half your years you were all pro. I mean, if you played half of your career and you were the best at your position, that's all pro. That to me, and a lot of these guys have that. Go look at their careers. A lot of them, half the years that they played, they were all pro. And so, not so, even Pro Bowls were, like I said, up until the year 2000, Pro Bowls really did mean a lot. Once they got the fan voting, to me, you could throw it out the window. But I think the fan voting counted for 30%. I believe that's what it was. I thought I looked it up. And you got guys here. They talk about fumble recoveries. They talk about this. there's not much for the defensive players. But when you start looking at guys like, I think there was a couple other players that were involved in 2 decades of, but not many. And you could see, you say, geez, this guy was really, but of those guys, a lot of people have Alan Page up there because he was the first defensive player, I think, Mark, to win MVP, wasn't he?
Yeah. 1971, yep. He won MVP. Yeah.
Right. And he was an undersized guy. He was only about 240 pounds, I think.
Well, I think at the beginning, he fluctuated because at the beginning he was bigger. But then he got into, like midway into his career, he was studying to become a lawyer. And then he got into like marathon running. He got into running very heavily. And so he probably lost a good 30 pounds. Just from all the running he was doing. So, but Alan Page.
He became a judge, Arnie. Alan Page. He became a judge.
Yep, became a judge. So, what do we have? We could go to outside linebackers.
Yeah.
So they have Lawrence Taylor as number 1. Jack Ham is number 2. Number 3, I'm a little confused on this one because I always thought, but perhaps I'm wrong, I always thought Chuck Bednarik was a middle linebacker. But I looked it up and it looks like he played a lot of outside linebacker. And then they have number 4. Go ahead. Yep.
I think he might have played both, Mark. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think he played both. But I think he played a lot more outside linebacker than I thought he did. Then they have Ted Hendricks as number 4, and they have Bobby Bell as number 5. But here you have, you got to kind of look at weak side and strong, Like, again, if I was going to pick an 11-man team, you would have Taylor on the weak side, right? He played weak side, and Jack Ham played strong side. So you're all set up there. You got Taylor at the weak side and Ham at the strong side.
Well, Taylor's a whole different. Yeah, he's a whole different animal, Mark, because he was a linebacker, almost playing like a defensive lineman, because he rushed the passer so much. When we started watching football in the 60s, a lot of these outside linebackers were dropping back in coverage. And Taylor did that too. I'm not going to take that away from him, but they say that Jack Ham is pure outside linebackers. They claim he was the best ever. That's like a general consensus of a lot of people.
Well, he was the best at pass coverage, I believe. He was outstanding at pass coverage. And like you said, Taylor was, he was really like a linebacker / defensive end. And so
he revolutionized that position. Put it to you that way. He really did.
Right. But like me and you discussed this, his timing was good too. He came in at just the right time when all the rules were changing. So, and he also had smart enough coaches. Between Belichick was the defensive coach and Parcells was the head coach. They were smart enough to realize, this guy has a special talent. So let's let him loose. Let him go rush the quarterback.
No, you're right.
Yep.
What year did he come out?
I think 81 was his first year. 1981 was his rookie season.
Because wasn't 83 when they went to sacks were official records? Or somewhere around about there?
I think he's right.
82, 83, probably around there, yeah. Probably I'm
looking at their Pro Bowls. They list that here. I would rather see all pros things. If you go to their full page, they tell you. Well, at the Pro Bowls, they list them in this quick thing to look at.
Right.
And That's why Ray Nitschke gets shortchanged. Ray Nitschke only went to one Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
And he was on 2 of those 3 lists about guys being taken out of the Hall of Fame. And if you look at his, but when you watch, look, the Packers were like they were the dominant team of the 60s.
Yeah.
And Ray Nitschke was the middle linebacker of the Green Bay Packers. So he's like the quarterback of the defense.
That's
and so
right.
a lot of guys think that, he got on because the team was so great. But when you start stacking him up against other linebackers, he wasn't as good as Willie Lanier, I don't think. I would take Willie Lanier over him.
Yeah, that's pretty much a toss-up. I maybe give Lanier a slight edge. But, Nitschke, at the beginning of his career, he didn't make All-Pro or Pro Bowl a lot because Joe Schmidt was playing for the Lions. He was the middle linebacker. And maybe he was just slightly better than Nitschke, so he always got voted to all Pro and Pro Bowl. And then in the middle of his career, he was Butkus started in '65, and you weren't going to beat Butkus out for All Pro. So look at the other middle linebackers at that time, and that would explain why he didn't make. Yeah.
No, I'm looking at the list. I'm looking now at the 2010 list because what I did was I made a copy, removed from the 2010 list, and then added in 2019. Ray Nitschke was removed in 2010, as was Sam Huff. Sam Huff was on that earlier list in the Sporting News list, and he got taken off. And Sam Huff, and so was Singletary. Singletary was removed. Mike Singletary was taken out of that 2010 list. They were there in 2010, but not in 2019. So the most recent list, those 3 guys are not on there for linebackers.
Middle linebacker's tough because there's been so many great ones over the years. That's one position where there's been just so many great middle linebackers. So they have Butkus as number 1, right? They have Nitschke as number 2. Lambert is number 3, Lanier as number 4, and there's no way I wouldn't put Lambert ahead of Lanier. Then they have Bill George, Mike Singletary, Joe Schmidt, and Sam Huff. So I don't have on my list is not 1999, but I don't have Bill George, I don't have Mike Singletary, I don't have Sam Huff. The other 5 guys I have in my top 100. But Butkus, I think maybe you're right about Lanier. Maybe slightly ahead of Nitschke.
I'll tell you who's very underrated, Marcus, Joe Schmidt. He was very, very good. He was great.
Yes.
And you don't hear a lot of talk about him like when guys talk about linebackers. But he was on all the lists. He wasn't removed from any of these lists here. That's how great he was. You know what I mean?
That's impressive.
And the other thing that stands out is I noticed of guys that were removed for this latest list of 2019, 3 on defense were Packers. Willie Davis, Herb Adderley, and Nitschke removed.
Yeah.
That goes back to the people who think that they got on because they were part of the Packer team. That's what that's when you read about it. That's what they always say. Oh, that they were part of the Packers team and they were kind of like, because it was such a great team. But
why don't they say the same thing about Jack Lambert then? Right?
I don't know. That's a great point.
Yeah. I do have Lambert on my top 100, but I don't have him ahead of Lanier or Nitschke or Butkus, of course.
One thing about Butkus, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I wouldn't put Lambert in the same class as those 3 guys. Butkus, Nitschke, Lanier, those are the top 3.
Anybody that watched, I went back and watched when they came out with that 2010 list. they came out with a video, which I have actually. Somebody gave it to me. I didn't even realize I had it until we started talking about all this stuff. But this was the video that came out. The 100 greatest players.
Right.
In this video was this booklet, okay, which was pretty handy. I came in and started looking at it. But I went back and started watching those videos. And nobody hit, to this day, I don't care what anybody, I'll argue the point with anybody. Nobody hit a guy like the force that he was hitting with Dick Butkus. I don't know what was going on there. But he was hitting men, and he was, you just go back and watch any films of Dick Butkus. He was lifting men up off the ground, and he was hitting, but his impact when he was hitting them was second.
Right.
I've never seen it since. Never. Not even close.
He would hit them
I'm talking about on a regular basis.
It was like a car crash. Right. The guy that he was tackling would get launched into the air and thrown into the teammate who was standing behind him. He'd knock down like three guys like dominoes. It was like a domino.
He was actually injuring some of his own teammates. If you look at some of those films. Yeah. He was hitting guys so hard, or other guys were coming in to make the hit. He was hitting the guy and the teammate all at once. And guys were laying on the ground, but here's the thing, though. This wasn't like he was hitting quarterbacks, unsuspecting men who don't feel, do have no pocket presence. They don't feel. Right. He was hitting running backs like this.
Right. And
There's a famous clip of Butkus, Mark.
Right.
Where he picks off a pass, and he's got it in one hand. He's carrying the ball out, and he's actually looking for men to run over. He's not going. He's actually looking for men so he can run them over with the ball. It's you'll see it in the clips. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
it really is. It's great.
I think of Jerry Kramer, the guard for the Packers. Someone was interviewing Jerry Kramer and asked him about Butkus. And asked him, how hard did he actually hit? And Kramer said he never really he never really hit the offensive lineman that hard because he just wanted to get them out of the way. He said he never really bothered, all he cared about was getting them out of the way and getting to the guy with the ball. So Kramer said, he never really hit me that hard because I wasn't the guy with the ball. He just wanted to kill the guy with the ball.
His career got cut short, but he had bad knees.
Yes, very bad.
The Bears, let's face it, the Bears weren't actually juggernauts when he was playing.
Oh, no.
And so, a lot of these guys that got on this list later on, Mark, the 2019 list, the guys that got voted to that list, don't forget, they had the benefit of being on television. And like somebody said about Ray Guy once, the punter who's in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I think Dick Enberg got him into the Hall of Fame because he would constantly talk about the hang time of the Ray Guy's punts. So they say John Madden got guys into the Hall of Fame. People say that. And so with no television really, with Butkus playing in the 60s, most of his career, I think, right? 60s. What year did he come out? 65?
65 to 73. Played 9 years. Oh,
yeah. You didn't see a lot of those Bear games. You know what I mean?
No.
And he was phenomenal. He really was.
Yep. Well, you want to go to the defensive backs? They didn't pick too many. They didn't pick too many safeties. So they got Ronnie Lott, number 1. They got Larry Wilson, number 2. They got Kenny Houston, number 3. Emlyn Tunnell, the Giants, number 4. Jack Christensen at number 5. Jack Christensen, I do not have on my top 100. The other 4, I do. If I had to pick 2, if I could only pick an 11-man team, hard to beat Kenny Houston. Kenny Houston, I think would have to be.
He was tremendous.
Yeah, Kenny. I'd have a hard time keeping Kenny Houston off the field. And then between Lott and Wilson, that would be a tough choice. I don't know which one I would go with. But Wilson was the first safety to really blitz, right?
Yes.
He was
like the father of the safety blitz. That's correct.
That's right. And he wasn't a big guy either.
No, they have Kenny Houston here with 51 punts. He also returned punts.
Right.
So, I mean, all that stuff comes into play when they consider, he was a great, great player. He played in 196 games, and he had 49 interceptions. I mean, that's not the telltale sign. Like I said, stats aren't everything. Mel Renfro had more interceptions than that.
Yeah.
Mel Renfro, I believe, had 52. I think, well, they got Lem Barney on this list from 99 at corner. But we were talking about safeties here, but I'm going to be honest with you. I think one of the best I've ever seen. I watched a clip on him the other night. I'll show. And he did end up playing safety at the very end, but I think he came up as a corner. And at the later in his career, they moved him to safety. And he was all pro at safety, believe it or not. And I would take him over Deion Sanders every day, any day of the week, and twice on Sunday. It's Rod Woodson. I thought he was tremendous. Yeah. Rod Woodson was phenomenal. Deion Sanders couldn't tackle. You're not saying he couldn't tackle. He could, but
want to.
He didn't want to tackle.
Yeah.
You got to have guys on your team that want to hit people, and Ron Woodson did it all.
Right.
He did. I thought he was just a more complete player. I thought he was that good. I really did.
Yep. So at cornerback, we got a Detroit Lion, Arnie.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Dick Night Train Lane, they have ranked as the number 1 cornerback. Then Mel Blount, number 2, Mel Blount. 3 is Deion Sanders. 4 is Herb Adderley. They picked a lot of cornerbacks. Willie Brown, number 5. Darrell Green, number 6. Woodson, they have at 7th. Mike Haynes, they have 8th. And Lem Barney, another Detroit Lion. I didn't have him on my top 100, but they have him as the 9th. They picked 9 cornerbacks.
I thought Lem Barney was great.
Oh, yeah.
I thought Lem Barney for the Lions was a great player. He had 56 career interceptions, which is pretty damn good. And he had a lot of kick. He returned 143 punt returns and 50 kick returns, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He was an all around great player. Him and Mel Renfro were, because they played a lot during their careers, kind of overlapped.
Right.
Because Mel Renfro came in a little sooner, but Lem Barney got voted to this team. Mel Renfro did not. And I thought Lem Barney was just a great player.
He absolutely was. I don't know now if I had to pick an 11-man team again. You can only pick 2. Oh, boy. It's really hard. Blount, I got to go with Blount, Mel Blount. And maybe Night Train Lane. You got 2 heavy hitters there.
Yes.
Blount and
you
Lane.
Would have to think.
They'd be afraid to catch the pass with those 2 guys out there.
Yeah, his signature tackle was the clothesline.
That's right.
And you go watch those old films of Night Train Lane. He was correct. I met him actually at the Hall of Fame once.
That's right.
I thought he was taller, but he wasn't that tall, but he had a very heavy accent. Yeah. I'm not sure where he was from, but that guy George Plimpton, he played with the Detroit Lions. He was a writer,
right?
And they let him come in, and he wrote a book called Paper Lion.
Yep.
And he said Night Train Lane. He says he was talking about stuff. He says I'm not sure what he was talking about because he couldn't understand him. And he was from England, I think. And he said I don't even think Night Train Lane knew what he could understand himself. He was just making a joke, but I mean. It was a different era, but he was the pioneer of it all. I would say you got to put him in there as just, as the top guy.
Yeah.
Based on what I've read, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
I mean,
okay.
the most recent guy in that list, Mark, was Darryl Green. No, Deion Sanders was more recent than him. Okay.
On that list from '99, yeah, Sanders would be the most recent.
Yes.
So now we got another list here. This one is from 2007. This is Paul Zimmerman from Sports Illustrated, and he didn't pick. Sports Illustrated asked him to pick an all-time offense and an all-time defense. They told him 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, and Zimmerman said, "No, forget it. I can't. There's no way I could do that." He said, "It's impossible." He said, "That would be impossible. I'm not doing it." So they said, "All right, then just pick, do whatever, you know." So defensive end, he had Reggie White, and he gives like a little what was special about each player. Reggie White, he said, was the most powerful defensive end. That's what I was telling Arnie. He was like a power rusher. Then he had Deacon Jones as the best overall pass rusher. He has Gino Marchetti, and we were talked about this, that he brought in the art of grabbing and throwing the blocker. And now, this guy, bit of a surprise here. This is what I liked about Paul Zimmerman. He didn't just go with the standard picks. Know who he has as his number? It looks like, well, he didn't really number them, but he's got them in his like top 4. Denver Broncos, Dave. Rich Tombstone Jackson.
Yes.
He has in his top 4. Said he changed.
Really?
Offenses had to change their game plans because of Rich Jackson. And he lobbied for him every year. He lobbied for him to get in the Hall of Fame. And they would always say, yeah, but he had a short career. But that's one thing I noticed about Paul Zimmerman. He didn't really seem to put a lot of stock into how long your career was. Like if you had 4 years where you were a dominant player, that was enough for him. But his career was cut short by a very bad knee injury. So those were his top 4.
It's like Terrell Davis. You know, they say, should he be in the Hall of Fame or not? He only has played 7 years. But to me, because football is such a physical sport,
right?
A guy that could play 12, 14 years and barely miss any games, that in itself is a feat, I think.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
You know what I mean? They talk about Jim Marshall. I don't have his stats here. I can look him up, but he played an unbelievable amount of games for the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't think he ever missed a game. Right?
No, I think he played till he was 40. He might have been 41 years old when he finally retired. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if I would say Hall of Fame, but to play, like you said, and for only one team, and for only not most of his career, he played for Bud Grant. I think he played for Van Brocklin too, but most of his career he played for Bud Grant. And if you could start every game for Bud Grant, you know you were doing something right.
He played from 1961 to 1979.
That's amazing.
289 consecutive games.
Wow, that's amazing.
Okay, to me that's phenomenal.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal.
It is phenomenal.
You know, I brought it up as a point. Not that he's, not that he's on any of these lists, Jim Marshall, but the fact that if you could last that long, like some of these guys, Merlin Olsen played 14 years. That's big as a defense. Yeah. And Lilly played 14. I mean, a lot of these guys played, getting back to the safeties and corners, Mark, one of the more recent guys, and it was, I proved pretty unanimous, was Ed Reed. Ed Reed got put in there on the list. Yeah, he got put in there on those later lists.
Right.
He's on the 2010 list, and he's on the 2019 list, Ed Reed.
That's more of Arnie's era, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ed Reed.
I mean, he was tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I only know a lot about Ed Reed, or not a lot, but I know only of him because of the fantasy football. And, as you start watching all the games, because you got these different players, now you're seeing guys you probably wouldn't be watching. Ed Reed was phenomenal. He really was.
Right. Okay.
I mean, he could tackle. He could cover. He always seemed to be in the right place, he was always around the ball. He was what they call a real ball hawk. He really was.
Yeah, the other thing he did, too, was Ray Lewis would not have been what Ray Lewis was without Ed Reed, because he knew Ray could make more, I guess you could say he could take more risks because he had Ed Reed was going to take care of business on the back end.
That's a good point.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two.
It was. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Just getting back to the defensive end. Paul Zimmerman had two. He didn't really say where he would rank these guys, but they were like honorable mention. He made Howie Long. He said Howie Long didn't have a tremendous amount of sacks, but he caused a lot of sacks because he would flush out the offensive lineman and allow his teammates to make the sack. And then the other guy he mentioned, Mark Gastineau. He said,
"Holy Moses!"
He said, "Mark Gastineau." Well, he did point out that Mark Gastineau had very little interest in stopping the run. He pointed that out. That's why he didn't have him as one of his top guys. But he said he was a relentless pass rusher. And I forgot about how athletic he was. He said he weighed 290 pounds. He ran a 4.5 40-yard dash. 4.5 weighing 290. That's how athletic. Yep, that's how athletic he was.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've got a list here, Mark, of selected by Merlin Olsen of the defensive linemen I admire the most. These are his picks, Merlin Olsen.
That should be
was the second best ever.
Yeah.
Deacon Jones, he's got it number one, obviously, because he's their teammates.
Right. Played
he's
right
got
next to him.
Bob Lilly at number 2.
Uh-huh.
He's got Reggie White at number 3. So he's got a little more modern guy in there. He's got Bruce Smith at number 4. Bruce Smith.
Wow.
Who we really didn't I don't think we touched on him at all. But he's on those more recent lists.
Yeah. He was on the list, yep.
He's got Joe Green at 5, Marchetti at 6, Doug Atkins, who we didn't talk about.
Yeah, he's
Doug
on some
Atkins,
of these.
He's on. I think he's on the 99 and the. I don't know if Zimmerman mentions him, but Doug Atkins, primarily played for the Saints, Mark?
No, most of his at the end of his career, he played for the Saints. Most of his career, he was with the Bears, and he's another guy that played till he was about 40 years old.
Doug Atkins, phenomenal.
Yeah, he's not on the 99 list. I think he's on one of the more recent lists. Did they have anybody else there that Merlin Olsen picked?
The final 3, Mark. Yeah. Randy White. There's one for Arnie. Alex Karras. He's got Alex Karras in there. And Willie Davis at number 10.
Right.
Yep, Willie Davis at number 10.
Willie Davis gets mentioned a lot, yeah. Karras was probably a little bit underrated. Do you ever read the book by Vince Lombardi called what was it called? Running to Daylight?
No, I never read it.
Oh, very good book. Basically, the book is just about 1 week, like starting on Monday and ending on just the whole book is just the preparations that go into 1 week of, getting ready to play your opponent. And they were getting ready to play the Detroit Lions. And all through the book, he kept mentioning and he wouldn't mention his name. I think they had a little bit of a rivalry, Vince Lombardi and Alex Karras. So he would never mention his name, but he would say all through the book, he would say, "We got to stop that number 71. We got to stop number 71." So I think he's probably a little bit underrated.
He mentioned him here. He's mentioned on that list right there. And here's a list by Art Shell. Art Shell made a list of the toughest defensive ends he ever played against.
Right.
And at number 1, he's got Deacon Jones again.
Right.
He's on all these lists, Deacon Jones.
Yep.
And number two is going to surprise you, I think. Lyle Alzado.
That does surprise me. Yeah. That does
Elvin
surprise me.
Bethea at number 3. Fred Dean at number 4. Let me tell you something about Fred Dean. Those 3 lists that I got about guys who shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame,
Right.
Fred Dean was on all 3 of those lists. I found that very surprising.
Wow.
I didn't read. I have to read. I can't remember exactly what each list, why they thought that he maybe shouldn't be in there, but he's on here from Art Shell, and he was pretty darn good, Art Shell. He's got Rich Jackson. There you go. Right there, Mark, number 5, Rich Jackson.
Yeah. Just
okay.
I mean, you know how good he was just by his nickname. They call him Tombstone.
Yes.
Who else does he have?
He's got Cedric Hardman, L.C. Greenwood. Here's a surprise for you. Coy Bacon.
Yeah.
For Coy Bacon?
Yeah.
Yeah, those were the toughest ones he's got. Yeah.
Wow.
So these are interesting things by guys who Deacon Jones has a list of the best linebackers from his era. And at number 1, believe it or not, he's got Chuck Bednarik. He's got number 1 position. This is Deacon Jones picking these guys. Dick Butkus at 2, Ray Nitschke at 3, Sam Huff at 4, Bell, Lanier, Jack Ham. He's got Lambert at 8, Ted Hendricks. All those guys are on the lists. And Bill George at number 10.
Right. He was really the first middle linebacker. Right? Bill George. I think 1954. Because they pretty much played like 5-4 or 5-2 up to that time.
They did.
And Bill George was really the first middle linebacker.
Yes, exactly.
So
I mean,
what was that, Dave?
No, it's kind of when you start reading what the players actually think, it's very similar. All these guys are on these lists, if you think about it.
Right.
I'm trying to look for some coaching lists of different coaches, what they think, because there's some of them are a lot of. Here's a list by Mike Ditka of the best linebackers he's ever seen. He's got Dick Butkus at number 1, obviously, because they played. Their careers.
Yeah.
Or he was on the Bears at the same time.
Yeah, they played together.
He's got Ray Nitschke at number 2. Singletary at number 3. Mike Singletary.
Yeah, that's kind of a surprise.
There you go. Here you go, Arnie. Joe Schmidt at number 4. And Bill George at number 5. He's got 6 is Ham, 7's Lambert. Chuck Howley at number 8. Mark.
Right. Yep. Chuck Howley.
Willie Lanier at number 9, who I predict he will get in this year, Chuck Howley.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get in.
I sure hope so.
Let's hope he's still alive, when they make the thing. It's only a few months away.
Yeah.
And Sam Huff at number 10 on this list. Lanier and Huff. So of those guys, Butkus is on the list. Nitschke was on the list, and then he got kicked off of the 100 greatest. Singletary was in this book, but he's not on the final list. He got kicked off the latest list. Right. Joe Schmidt's on all 4 lists, I think, all 3 lists. Bill George is in there. Jack Ham is on all the lists. Lambert's on all the lists. Howley's not on any of the lists, but he's here.
Yeah.
Lanier's on all lists. And Sam Huff gets kicked off at the end, too. He's not on the 2019. He's got one of the guys that's been removed.
Right.
But, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if you take that, if you look at that bookmark, I made a list. When the 2010 list came out from the NFL, they made all those videos.
Right.
I made a list of the players and how they went up and down on the list. How they moved from 1999
right.
to 2010. It was only a 10-year span.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of different movement.
Wow.
Like, here's a guy we didn't talk about, a lineman who made it. Leroy Selman.
Yeah.
Leroy Selman was on that list. He got added to that list, but he was not in the book. He was not in 99, obviously. By 2010, he was on the list. Same thing with Derek Brooks, the linebacker for Tampa Bay. He's not on the early list, but he's on the later lists. The top 100 players. Derek Brooks is on 2 of those lists, I think.
Right.
I'm looking it over now. Sam Huff dropped down. He was on the list both of the 99 and 2010, but he lost 17 spots. He dropped down. I'm looking at Willie Davis also, same thing. He went down 17 spots. He was number 69 in the book out of 100. He went down 17.
Right.
Joe Schmidt made it, but he went down 19. He went down 19 spots. I'm not sure any of them went up. I'm looking at that now.
That's not likely.
You know, I'm looking at the line. Bobby Bell only dropped 3 spots. He was 66 in 1999. He only dropped 3 spots. But Bobby Bell was a great player. Bobby Bell was a big guy. Like, Bobby Bell was like a linebacker that would be playing today.
Yeah.
He was not like a small linebacker. He wasn't one of these 215, 20-pound guys. He was a big guy.
And he was fast.
He was very good.
Size and the speed.
He was very good.
Okay.
I'm looking at some of these linebackers. I'm looking at Randy White made all the lists.
Right.
But he did drop 11 spots. He's another guy that doesn't really get enough credit. He was phenomenal, Randy White. He really was.
Yeah.
Jack Ham went down 13. He went from 47 to 60.
Wow, that's surprising.
And Mike Singletary only dropped 1, although Singletary got kicked off the 2019 100 greatest players. At the most recent list, he's not on there.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of players. 100 years.
No.
100 years of NFL. That's a lot of players.
No, it is. I mean, it's a lot of players, and it's something to make the team.
Yeah.
You know, and so the guys that got dropped off, and some of the guys that got added. I don't know if I necessarily agree with them, but they added John Randall to that list in 2019. Do you agree with that, or
I wouldn't have him. No, I wouldn't have.
No, I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
How about a linebacker? They added Junior Seau to that list. 100 greatest players.
I might go with Seau. But Randall, I thought was he was a good pass rusher, but you could run the trap on him. Him and Alan Page had the same problem. They were great pass rush. They were 2 of the best defensive tackles at pass rushing, but against the run, they were a little questionable. You could run the trap on both of those. Look what they did.
No, you're right.
Look what the Dolphins did at Page in the super Bowl. They just kept running the trap. And he couldn't.
Super Bowl 8.
That's right.
There was some tremendous... If you go back and watch some of the highlights of that game, the Dolphins' offensive linemen were actually swiping guys off their feet in that game. Taking them completely out of the plays.
That was an incredible offensive line. They talk about the Great Wall, what do they call it? Emmitt Smith's offensive line. That Dolphins offensive line, to me, was the best offensive line ever. That was phenomenal line. Oh, phenomenal. Well, I'd like to see
how many... Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to get back to Paul Zimmerman's list. Defensive tackle. He's got Lilly number 1.
Oh, There you go. I guess we're going to have to wait until next week for part 2 of the defense for Mark, Dave, and yours truly, the football history dudes, all time of the 100 list. You've been listening to Yesterday Sports and the football history dude on the Sports History Network, the headquarters for sports yesteryear. Now, if you want to go ahead and learn more about the Sports History Network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the football history dude. And I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.